folks. First, I'd like to obviously welcome everybody to join us. We thank you for coming. This is what we're calling Gifts Galore. Obviously, back with us is John Underhill and Mark Dreyer. It's always good to have all three of us together. The day is a blast. You miss the better part of this operation completely when you're not here for the day.
Is that when you got us picking orders?
Yeah, when you're picking orders. That's right. Those of you who have anything here that you've ordered today, if it's wrong, I had nothing to do with it. These two guys screwed it up. So just understand that everything I did today is perfect as always.
If you got extra, you're welcome.
If you got extra, I want it back.
And no, and the other side is, if you didn't get it all, thank you for buying something.
So yeah, we've had a really good time, as you can tell. Also, I want to thank Dean, as always, for being part of this operation. Without him, this is much more difficult to do. So thank you, Dean, as always, for keeping us on track with the Zoom presentation.
No problem.
So, a little bit about what we're planning on doing tonight, so that you have a clue. All of you, probably all of you, currently make pens. So we're starting out with, okay, if you're going to have a gift for Christmas or whatever holiday time, some ideas about different things you can do with pens. From there, we'll move into a number of different products. Obviously, I'm in this industry now. For a long time, I was on your side of it, trying to make and sell things. This year has been a transitional year for the industry. We're talking with the MPG, we're talking about how we're going to incorporate small turnings and so forth. This whole industry now has started to come out with more and more kits that are designed for kitchen use, household use. You'll see a lot of the things that Mark and John have brought with them to show you other ideas. And many of these things weren't here a year or two ago. So yeah, I think you're going to see that as you get more and more accustomed to working with these non-pen kits, we'll call them, they, first of all, many of them don't have instruction sheets. So when you start out in this, you have to bring a little ingenuity with you. Now, these two guys bring a lot of ingenuity, so that's easy. But some of the things that you'll look at, you say, this doesn't make any sense to me. If that happens, contact me through email, and I certainly will put together some kind of an instruction sheet. Honestly, those things take 5 or 6 hours, believe it or not. But if we know that we've got something, there's a lot of similarity from one to the next to the next. So if you start to get an idea of this is how it all flows and how it all comes together, you won't have much trouble picking up how to make them work. So with that being said, I think I'll leave all the rest of the details.
Yeah. So one of the things that you'll see tonight when we are doing this stuff, we were really conscious about what we were doing, and we weren't trying to set up a big smorgasbord. We're going to use the same technique, basically the same technique, the same little components that we're going to use in almost everything that we have. That doesn't mean that Ed doesn't have a whole bunch of other things out there. What we thought is, kind of dipping your foot in the water, showing you what we can do with it, trying to use some of the same setups that you traditionally have, and then you can go from there. I also want to mention that Dean, I think he mentioned here on the side, is monitoring the chat. Once again, as always, this one's going to hopefully be more interactive, right? Because it's something we're all new to.
Right.
So I don't want to disappoint you up front, but if there's something that you're going to ask, we may or may not know the answer to it because of the fact that it is new to a lot of us and we did what we did, but Ed will know the answer to it. So it's going to be interactive. We're probably going to pause after every section, and we're going to ask Dean to give us all the questions, and we'll go through it to the best that we know. And just to give you an idea of what the format looks like, we're going to kind of talk about pens, then we're going to talk about the components that we use to build everything else, and then we're just going to go through everything. We're going to show you kitchen stuff, we're going to show you grooming stuff, we're going to show you just a bunch of really cool things that we had fun making, and we got a couple from a guest host that are going to be out there. So with that, you want to start with the pens, John, and go for them all.
So I think pens is what brought most of us together. The nice thing about the pens, especially this time of year, is not only are we making things that are fun, but we're making gifts. Primarily this month's gathering that we're doing here, this video, we want to cover gifts, but a lot of times inspiration is something that we're looking for. So whether it be just something that's fun, something that appeals to somebody, a collectible, or something that's just seasonal. So with that, Mark, I'm going to pass these over. We're going to show some close-ups. Obviously,
Just take what you want. I can hold the rest of it. Okay.
gifts are great, especially if it's somebody that's been in the
This is
military or is currently in the military. You think you want to turn the camera angle down a little more? I don't know. There you go.
The couple pens are going to be a little bit harder for us to showcase, but there you go.
Yeah, because they're so small, they're gonna be a little difficult to view. But what's nice about the pens, obviously, is they make great gifts, and everybody can use one, whether it be hobby or professional. And who doesn't have enough pens?
So these are the military ones. This one's got army button in it.
Yeah, so but if it's something minor like that, you might be able to just.
These are more of a special interest, this next group. Obviously, who doesn't like candy? Those are great around Halloween time as well. But there's the variety of them are never ending. Animals, now Penn State, they have all of these new pen sets about every 3 weeks, it seems like they come out with a new special interest. And so with the animals, that's a big hit with people. These are actually pictures of a person's private animals, photographs taken and then cast under clear resin, so they get a pen with their pets on it.
We covered this technique 2 months ago.
Yes, yeah, we have. And
In case you're not completely familiar with it, there is a cat pen, there's a dog pen, and now there's a horse pen as well. And the horse pen has been very popular. Obviously, people who have horses also have money because those things are expensive. I had them for years. So it's something that often a family will have 2 or 3 kids that are into horses and riding. So I tell everybody in my sales presentations, the easiest people to sell pens to are people who have money. And if you have horses, you have money. You don't have as much of it as you would if you didn't have horses, but that's another story. Go ahead.
well, and also with the label casting for the animals.
Yep.
The vehicles. There's also the laser engraved kits that you can get. Ed's got all of those for the special interests, and we'll also show you another way to use those in a little bit.
That's
Car.
the car.
Here's one of my favorites.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot of pen sets out there that you can make for the fishermen, so we come up with this fish and lure looking blank to kind of give the guys something to focus on when it's in the wintertime and he can't cast one out there. But we talked about seasonal, so we like to have some fun, Christmas time, so we'll make some pens that look like candy canes. And these next few, they're plaid, so I always tease my wife. She's always saying she needs accessories to go with her outfits. And I thought, well, she needs accessories, what the heck, so do I. So I started making some pens that resemble some of my shirts. And these are all the plaids or the flannels. So just something, you can relate to the holiday season or something different. But special interests, they're always a big hit at Christmas time. If you can relate a pen to an individual, whether it be a hobby or a career, then there's pretty much probably a blank out there that you can get that's going to make that gift that much more special.
Or can make, right? You can make them
Absolutely.
yourself.
You can just put them in the bin.
You want me to hold on to that for you?
Nope, I got it.
Okay. Where do you want to go from pens, guys?
So before
I was
you
thinking,
jump off pens,
Yep.
yeah, one question in the chat. Somebody says, "Have you ever tried to a cast blank with a fly in it, like fly fishing?"
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people out there doing that kind of stuff. You just have to be careful how small they are. You want to make sure that the hooks are tiny. And you've got to pick the right component set. If you're using something with a small tube, you're going to be challenged. You want something that's going to show a little more surface. So yeah, there's a lot of that out there.
If it's okay, I would
Yeah.
like to maybe talk about the bottle stoppers, talk about the setup, how we do it, and then that way that applies to
Yeah,
everything else. that we're
Absolutely,
gonna do.
that sets
Sure.
the pace for the.
As you can
answers.
tell, we did not put together a script for this. We have a table full of stuff, and all three of us had something to do with making all of it. So we haven't got this is the way it's going to be. So sit tight and you'll see everything that's on the table.
And so I thought maybe what we'd start talking about are bottle stoppers. And the kind of the fun thing about doing this stuff is you're going to be able to use up a lot of your scrap. So this is just an end piece of a burl that was cast. And the cool thing about doing this stuff is, and what we're going to show you is, it's kind of universal once you figure it out. So what we're doing on almost everything here is we're using these 3/8 inch inserts, and you can pick them up and you can get them by the bag, and these are the inserts. And what you do is you start out by,
Think about a 1/2 inch diameter hole.
Yep. you take whatever you're gonna turn, and this one I take and I drill a 1/2 inch hole. Then I insert the basically the insert into it, glue it in. One thing I want to point out, because I've seen people demo this and talk about this, and we'll just say they do it different than I do it. And I think John and Ed do it the same way that I do it, is that I'll see a lot of people who will drill the 1/2 inch hole, and then when they want to put this insert in, they'll put glue in the hole, and then they'll slowly push this insert in. The problem with doing that is that you're actually acting as a plow, and that glue is going to go up and get in the insert. And I've seen some people on YouTube talk about, well, then what you do is you take a little file and dig it all out. I'll tell you this, if you put the glue on the insert, and you can see it's got the serrations in it, so that when you put it in, I put it in with a little bit of a twist, like anything else, twist it in, and then I'll let it sit in there, and then I don't get the glue to go all the way up into it. So hopefully that makes sense. But now the cool thing about it is, once I have this and I've got this insert into it, the only thing that I have to keep in mind when we're looking at some of the products that we're going to have in front of it is, whatever you're going to insert, make sure that the length of whatever it's going to be, that hole is deep enough. I also want to tell you some of the things, right, that all you good, cautious pen makers do applies to these things too. If I'm going to turn something like this that's got some transparency possibly into it, I'll actually take the hole after I drill it out. It's a 1/2 inch hole, and I'll paint it. I'll paint it white, and I'll paint it all the way up as much as I can, because I don't want to see the see-through part of it. I want to make sure that everything that you see in there gets colored so that it'll bounce off and reflect quicker. So now that you have that and you have that little concept, let's talk about finishing it, and then we'll talk about turning it, and then we'll talk about finishing it.
Can I add something to that?
Oh,
real quick?
please.
One of the things I like to do. You want to?
Do you want the piece or do you
Yes,
want the
please.
camera?
Yes, please. And the camera.
Ooh, both.
So one of the things I like to do also, if I'm concerned about getting the epoxy in the hole on the threads, I'll put that insert on the bottle stopper first. And that way I know it's on as far as it'll go. And when I put the epoxy around it and I set it in that hole, if I push that all the way down to where the bottle stopper sits on the blank, then I know I'm not gonna bottom out before it's fully screwed in. So as it starts to cure, I will unscrew that after, say, 20 minutes. That way, if any epoxy got on the surface here, you didn't just glue it to your blank. You can unscrew it while it's still a little tacky. And that way, you know that your threads are deep enough, and that the threaded rod that goes into it is going to be, it's going to fit. It's not going to bottom out, and it's going to be above the blank. So,
For those of you who are among the millions that buy the 5-minute epoxy, John is talking about epoxy that takes 30 minutes, not the 5 minutes.
well, actually, I'll use 5-minute epoxy. I'll just mix a little bit up, and then I just drop it in a hole, and I'll set it upright like that. So that way I know it's sitting in there, but I'll give it a couple minutes and it's still, you're able to unscrew it without pulling that insert out.
Cool.
So yeah, it works very well.
A word
Ed?
about the inserts. We tried to put this all together, staying with the 3/8 inch insert because that's the one that's widely available. After I looked at the kits, honestly, I don't see the kits a lot, and this has been a good exercise for me. I learned a lot, but there are a number of these kits that do not use 3/8 inch. I have located a source, it's not in the United States, that I will be able to source out these inserts in various sizes. So at the present time, if you are trying to do something and you find out that it's a 5/16, so you find out, like I did the other day, the meat cleaver that you'll see is 12 millimeter with 1 point something or other pitch and all the rest of that stuff. Well, long story short, you wouldn't want to try to find that insert. A little longer story, I did. So we will have those available to you. They are not yet on the website, but this has gotten me to the point where we will be looking for all the things that you need in order to make this whole thing simple. You can do it without the inserts. You can put it in there and either thread the hole, or you can put in epoxy and it's there permanently. I think that it's a much better idea to use the insert. I never did when I was doing shows, but the inserts weren't out there that well yet. But I think that really does make your whole process better.
A little easier to clean.
It is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it
we'll
keeps
take
it,
apart.
we tell people not to put them in the dishwasher. So if we make the handle so that you can't get it off, what do you think is going to happen to it? So, okay, my 2 cents.
The question, do you carry the inserts? I was gonna paste the link. Is this the PSI 4-pack inserts on your site?
Is that this?
Yeah, that one, yes. Yes.
Yep.
And
So
then
John-
there's
Go
one
ahead.
more question before you jump to the next item. Going back to the pens, somebody asked if the Marine Corps pen, are those something that's available? Are those on
the
the
blanks?
Marine Corps blanks?
Yeah, they are. Sadly, I can't make them as quick as Ed sells them. But yes, that is something that is periodically in stock.
Yep.
So
When John makes this stuff, he makes it with real military buttons. And so you have to understand that we get a nice shipment from him. Every time he makes them, we get a shipment of 20 or 30. But once he's used those 20 or 30, now his problem is he has to go out and find 20 or 30 more.
Yeah.
And like everything, it's on eBay, but it takes a long time to find what you're looking for when you're looking for something that specific. So,
well, and sadly, not all buttons are made the same. So, I've got a box of buttons that just don't work, and a lot of times you don't know until you get them. So it's just one of those things that the other's the walking medallions.
You do carry the walking
Yeah,
medallions.
the walking medallions are nice too, but unfortunately, they're only for the larger pens, the Majestics, the Gents, the full size ones, because they're, I think, 1.5 inches diameter, so you can't really wrap them around the smaller tubes.
we talk a lot at Exotic Blanks about the fact that John does unique things. But I often get requests for, well, I missed it when you had them up and now I want one. Well, it doesn't work that way. It works as when he can find them, he will give us another shipment of them and we get good quantities. But he is far more popular than most people and he's still way too economical. So,
Well, my biggest problem is there's only one person working in my sweatshop. So me.
Anything else, Dean?
That's it.
So getting back to the unpopular person in the group, who apparently has way more time on our hands. If you're gonna start doing this one, this is the apparatus that I use, and I think the box is
One
up
sec,
here.
Mark. Is there a dedicated light over that table?
Yes.
Can we turn that light off? Let's see if it's better without the light.
that's what I
That
thought.
one?
Yeah.
Everything's getting washed a little bit.
There a
And I
button I
think
can hit?
No, you
What's
gotta
it called?
pull that
I gotta pull
hand.
that chain.
Yeah.
All right, give us 1 second. John will be doing it while I'm talking.
Oh, that's a sufficient.
So I use, what is the box top for this one? This is the, well, let's wait. Let's see if John can get this one out.
Oh, no wonder.
Give us 1 second. Is that better?
It is.
Okay.
Can you see on here then? Okay. This is the system that I use for doing this stuff. And you can see here what this is it screws right onto my headstock. And it's got, I love this. It's got the 3/8 inch screw on there. And then you can find washers that will match up to whatever kind of, basically use it as a bushing if I want. So if I can get a bushing for my washer and I know what size I want to turn, I just turn it down onto here. So what I'll do is I'll take my blank, screw it on. Screw it onto it, screw this onto my headstock, and then I'll put my tailstock up to it just to give me a little bit of a balance point, and now I can turn it. And if I use those washers, as I said, you can see it down here. As long as that we know that the threading on here is 3/8, you can get a 3/8 inch washer to almost any diameter that you want, and you could then use that as a bushing for then when I want to actually turn this piece, I get it down to the exact diameter down here. That's how I turn it. And so that's how I'm going to say I don't want to take up too much of our time with it, but that's really how the majority of almost everything here that you see is turned. Just give you a recap. I love using the 3/8 inch inserts. They're threaded. As I said, I glue them by putting them on the outside, the glue on the outside. Then all I got to do is wrap this up, put it on my headstock, put it through here. When I do my turning, I turn whatever I want. And then I simply have it done. And there we go.
You might as well show the other stoppers while you're.
Yeah,
Add
so
it, you
so yeah. So I'm gonna put these on this side. Here's some other stoppers that were done recently. I love these.
Okay.
Cherry pits. So it's a cherry pit one. This one's John's, and it's, I believe it to be new.
Well, it's just more seasonal.
So let's see if we can get you a good.
It's
Here's
yeah,
something
you're
I could-
better with the just black behind it looks better.
All right. So it's a Christmas tree. John, you want to describe it?
Yeah, so I wanted to make it like a snow
Lay it
globe.
down and see how-
I've been, you could probably stand it up. even.
Okay, sorry.
I've been wanting to make some snow globe bottle stoppers for a while, and I went on and I searched for mini Christmas trees, and you can get just about anything miniaturized out there. And then I just took I think it was about 1.5 inch diameter piece of scrap burl that I had, drilled a hole, glued the Christmas tree in, and bought a can of dry fake snow, and I just brushed it on there and I sealed it real well. And then I used the eye candy snowflake is what the mica is. It's really large flake. And I just put a little bit in the clear resin. And that way, when you pour it, it literally stays suspended in the resin, and it looks like snow falling over your tree. And then you just turn it like, you drill it like Mark had showed with the 1/2 inch in the inserts, and turn it down and polish it. So sky's the limit on the little globes like that. You can do just about anything. Underwater scenes, you could put, miniature fish in there, plastic fish. You could have reindeer, anything you can buy miniaturized, and you can get that stuff at the hobby stores, especially for the train sets. They sell all sorts of that little miniature stuff. You can have a ball with it.
Talk a little bit about what you do to make sure that you don't see the bolt
threads
in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So on these, obviously with the Christmas tree, the burl was a little shallow. It wasn't as thick as I wanted. So I had a piece of green acrylic scrap that I just epoxied to the bottom. I used the 2-part 5-minute epoxy. I let it set for a day. And that way, when I drilled through it, my insert went through the green and into the wood. And that way, when I epoxy it in there, everything's held real nice. And then I turn it down. The cherry pits, obviously, everything just went in the cherry pits itself. But as you notice, like Mark's showing here with these stoppers, there's so many varieties out there. If you notice, some of them are flat on the bottom. Some of them have more O-rings than others. The more O-rings you have on a bottle stopper, the more versatile it'll be for fitting a wide range of bottles out there. So that one, it says, will fit anything from the whiskey bottles and the wine bottles. So you're not just limited to having to buy a bunch of different sizes. If you get them with the majority of the O-rings, I think that's a 5 insert. You've got a better chance of it fitting your bottle. And I know there's cork ones out there too. It's really just a matter of preference, what you have and what you want to do.
Years ago, they used to talk about these, the original one, the pointy one, was chrome plated, and there were comments frequently, that one. Okay, I'll take it for a minute. There were comments frequently about this because people apparently thought that it would be a good idea to put this into a wine bottle and then put it in the refrigerator. The refrigerator wasn't tall enough, so of course you lay it on the side. The bottle stoppers that came out from Ruth Niles, which we handle, one of the things they said about those, and I've never tested it, was that it would not leak if you did that. But point of information is, if you have anybody that's going to put it in sideways, you probably do want to do a little testing to find out, will it leak? How hard do you have to push it down in there so that it doesn't leak? Of course, the obvious answer that I used when I was at shows, people would say, well, you know, can I put it in the refrigerator, tip it on side and so forth? If you're serving wine at dinner and you're using this for your bottle stopper, why don't you just drink the whole bottle of wine among 4 people? So then you don't have the problem of what to do with it when you want to get it into the refrigerator. Wine in the refrigerator isn't very good anyway.
We also have to be concerned about what finish you're going to put on them. If you're putting a CA finish on it, you're putting it in the fridge, it's probably not going to hold up very long. So you're going to want to use lacquer or something a little more durable in the cold weather.
And what a perfect prelude to what I was going to just go over. So how do I finish these? Home Depot, I get a 3/8 inch eye hook. What I'll do is I've got a wall where I got a whole bunch of screws on here or a hanger, and then I can just hang them up, spray them with my lacquer, and then they're never to, you know, then I don't have to worry about touching them or putting them down somewhere. I just literally use this, hook them up, have a nail in my wall at home, and then shoot them with spray and then let them sit.
Well, the nice thing about that eye hook too is you can hold it and work at different angles and then just hang it up and never have to touch the workpiece.
Yep.
So that's a great idea.
Any questions, Dean?
He took a break.
Dean?
He's gone. He'll be back.
I'm talking on mute. One question and one suggestion. The one suggestion was, in addition to train supplies for stuff to put into your stoppers, look for dollhouse items.
Oh yeah, nice. Thank you.
Yeah, if you Google anything miniature, you're going to get tons of links.
The one question, Mark, could you read off the part number off of your fixture? The chuck.
Oh, the chuck?
Oh yeah,
the chuck.
yeah.
Okay.
It'll depend on the size. Let me go here. I'll read it off to you, but I'll get it on the camera too.
Yeah, if you read it off, I'll type it in under the chat. That's
Okay, so if you can get it there. The
UM.
middle part's going to be dependent on your, so it's UM dash, the one I use is 1.25 -8 WB, and the other one that you can pick up is UM -1 -8 WB. Obviously, the 1 and the 1.5 is the different headstocks that you have, and the 8 are the 8 teeth per inch. So these are my favorite. I love these. There is a different model here that I can show you. This one, you also carry these, right?
Yeah, we carry pretty much all of this stuff. Somebody asked me one time, why would you carry something that you really don't think is all that great? Because people buy it. So really, yeah, some of this stuff, like Mark is saying, I like the bigger one much better. But if you already have a scroll chuck and you're bound and determined to use it, you can take this design and put it into your scroll chuck and go ahead, Mark.
And it's basically the same setup. The only thing that you're gonna do is when you chuck this up, or the problem that I had with it is when I went to go chuck this up, then I had to make sure that I took the jaws off my chuck, right? Because I wanted this to be laying flat into my chuck. So this is the other model that they have out there. Same basic premise.
It's basically like a worm drive.
Yeah, the only difference is that I found on here, just being, just giving you ideas, is that the nuts that you use here as your spacers, there's not as much give and play. Sorry, there's not as much give and play on this ridge as there is on the other one. So that's why I could use a plastic washer and stuff like that. If I was to use this one, I would put this on there and then I would use my plastic washers up here. But then the problem you're having is getting that tool into there.
Mhm.
So, as Ed points out, there's a million ways to do it. That's just my favorite way of doing it.
If you don't want to buy anything to have to do this, you can do it turning between centers.
Yep.
Typically, well, to get ready for this, I had the this is huge. This piece, there it is. This piece goes with this handle now. It didn't before, but this is the 12 millimeter. So it's completely unique. So I made a hole in the top of the thing that was 12 millimeters and used that on a normal 60-degree dead center and 60-degree live center on the back end and turned it between centers. So, you don't have to have anything fancy. Now, there is a challenge to making it drive. I will tell you that. A 60-degree center isn't in a hurry to drive something that's going to be square and then turned into, and particularly polyester resin that spits all over the place. So, it isn't the easy way. Let me put it that way. I've been turning for 20 some odd years. I can always find a way, but I don't recommend this as the easiest way to get started. If you want to get started and you don't have a lot of experience and don't do this a lot, use the mandrel. You'll save yourself a lot of heartache. Go ahead.
So Ed always warns us that he doesn't want us to do commercials while we're here, but I'm going to tell you this. I think if you contact Exotic Blanks, they've got a starter set, and it's one that I helped put together.
Okay.
And it's got the mandrel in there. It's got some of the neural nuts. It's got everything in there. It's the way that I would do it. If it was me, and I've started with the other one, I would go to the stainless steel one as the mandrel of choice and start with this.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a catch-all for just about anything you're going to do with a handle.
So speaking of which, do you mind if I go through a couple other
No,
things?
go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to go through a couple other things, and then we'll jump over. We'll go my side of the table for a couple things, your side of the table, then the
Sure.
middle, and then we'll come back. So let me just show you some of the versatility on here. And this, as Ed said, this was the most fun. I came over here on last Saturday, and just picked up a bunch of stuff that Ed had. So this one is a meat pounder, and it's for tenderizing your meat. And what I had was I had at my house just a scrap, half acrylic, half wood that I had cast for a peppermill, and I had this little scrap in here. And so if I unscrew this, can you see what's in there?
Dawn also reminds us that same pattern is used for peanut butter cookies. So if you have someone in the family who's doing Christmas cookies, it can also be useful for that.
So it's the same thing, right? Drill the hole, put the threaded insert into it, put it on that chuck that I had, turned it, and so now I can put in that one. If I just want a pounding insert, here's a pounding insert. All works the same way. Let me do a couple more and then I'll throw it over back to
Go ahead.
John.
You're doing great.
fine. Keep it up.
One of my favorites, pizza cutter.
I got to make one of them. That's a big pizza cutter.
It is, and it's
Yeah.
really, really nice and
Yeah, it's
healthy.
nothing like the flimsy one I have at home.
So,
That thing
same thing,
beats-
when I unscrew it, you're gonna see here. But you know how that's made, right? All I did use the insert, the threaded insert, put it in. Now, one thing that I want to point out when I was making some of this stuff, so that so you don't make the mistakes I made when I first make some of this stuff. So I'm going to turn this back around. I love doing this stuff in Spectraply. The reason I like to turn in Spectraply is because it's easier to demo this stuff. So I can show people this if I'm doing a demo, Spectraply. But, so when I was putting this together and setting it up, this is just some, a tip or trick. I threaded the handle. I threaded the little part in the insert into there. Then I figured out exactly where I would get this to line up. So it lines up straight, right? So when I look at this here, and I'm actually using it as a cutter. I don't know if you can see it real well from what I'm trying to do here. But, or I put it on the side, you can see the cool part of the Spectraply lines up perfectly with the side. And I love that part. I love doing that kind of stuff.
And if you don't want to go through all that trouble, make it out of this.
Yep. Here's another one. I love this one. Half wood, half acrylic. And this is exactly the point, is that you can make it out of here and you don't have to be as conscious about the layout line, but it's beautiful. And what you're able to do is, if you're into casting, you're using some of these scraps here, casting the middle on here, you're making something that looks, incredibly rich. And you're basically doing it out of a whole bunch of scrap parts. So a couple other ones, and then I'll turn it over to the other rest of the team. This one is a grater. Same concept. Pull it apart, unscrew it, put it on. So what I did here is just use a really, really cheap piece of maple, and then used this is another commercial, but I used the Glue Boost coloring set, and I colored this, and basically got, something that looks really nice. Now, the nice thing about it is, if I want to use that handle, but instead I wanted to use a mashed potato, mashed potatoes with it. Go ahead.
I think that's background.
No.
noise.
If I wanted to use a mashed potato, same handle works in either one of these things. So one thing I wanted to point out, and when we were talking about this one, is this is more if you're going out and you're thinking about doing sales. And I hate to give my competition some ideas, but if you notice these, the handles are really, really similar. This is a scoop, a mashed potato, and a grater. The reason that I did that is that if someone comes into my booth and says, oh boy, I really wanted to do a grater, but I wanted to do it with this half wood clear piece, I can just unscrew this and put it on the other one. Where on like the pizza cutter, there's a little bit more girth to it, and I'm going to use it in my hand a little differently. So it's just, just a little food for thought. Some different things that you can do with that little nut and insert. I love it on these products. We talked about all these. We talked about the potato. Do you want to show me the one last thing I want to show you is the ice cream scoop? Yep. So this is one of Ed's, and I love the blank on here.
You can make it up and shut the other one off.
And so it's an ice cream scoop. And so basically the exact same concept as everything else. So once you get that technique down, you're going to see that the world opens up. Oh,
It's the same.
John's got one more.
Yeah.
So you want to give a little history on the background of this thing?
That's actually wood from Lambeau Stadium. They replaced some old bleachers, and I was able to get a piece. So my wife and her sister are huge Green Bay Packer fans, so I made her one. But it's all same inserts. Actually, that one I don't think I had an insert for, so I stabilized the wood and I threaded it into the wood. But I would recommend using the inserts because it's just a little safer.
The other comment that comes to mind, because I get the question all the time, do you have the bushings for this, that, or the other thing? And the answer for that, for all this stuff, you don't really need bushings. You're looking at all things that have been turned to a larger diameter, and then it screws in and it sits flat. The portion of the, well, here, this is a good way to see it. Well, there we go again. This flat is going to be against the product that you make. Now, this flat looks to me to be about 7/8 of an inch. But if you were to make that handle, this handle looks to be about 1.25 inches. But put it on there, and as you can see, it's the same unit, no wonder. It just fits in and looks natural. So when you're doing all these things and trying to do a lot of different turning, you're not confined to a given diameter. If you have something that has already got, for example, this diameter here, and here we go again. This diameter here, where the junction between the pizza cutter and the handle, you might look at that and say, well, I want that to match exactly. That's fine if that's what you want to do, but there is absolutely no reason why it has to. And if it does not, it fits on all the rest of the things that Mark has been demonstrating as well. So keep an open mind when you're making this stuff. And yes, if you want it to match exactly, go for it. If on the other hand, you want something that's relatively universal, then just make sure it's a little larger than the largest thing you're going to screw into it.
And
Right.
that hits it right on the head when I show that I just do that outside and that lip
Yep,
down,
yep.
because I can put almost anything into it.
Yep.
And still, and offer people, well, my kitchen's blue, my kitchen's yellow, my kitchen's whatever it is. I love doing the clear burls. I love casting it because as we can see, and this is one of Dawn's castings, but I'm not using a lot of wood.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need a real big chunk of burl. So I take the burl that I use for something else and I keep all my scraps and then I just cast it this way. And this is one of Dawn's, and I loved how this one came out.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, with that, I'll pass it over to the other side of the table if you guys want to talk about some of the ornaments and some of the smaller things too.
Well, we're on a roll with kitchen stuff. What do you
Okay.
think? We talk about the nutcracker and the spoons. And
One question before we pop in there. Somebody
sir.
asked, finish again, Mark, pizza cutter, etc. Was that all that same lacquer finish as you described at the beginning, or do you use some other finishes on some of these?
Excellent question. And I wanted to bring this up and I wanted to point it out. So on anything that's wood and it's bigger, yes, I'll use lacquer on it because I think the tendency is people will know that they can just wipe this down. Some of the stuff that we're going to move on to now coming up with some of the smaller things that we're going to turn and some of the smaller stuff that we're going to talk about, I'm very aware of the fact that I never want to see this go into a dishwasher, right? So I can just use a damp cloth. I can wipe it off. I think for most people in the kitchen, that's what they're going to use. So yes, the answer is on everything that you saw up until this point, shot with lacquer. Now, on some of the smaller stuff, we're going to do, I will use, because you know that I love Glue Boost, I'll use Glue Boost to stabilize it and do a little bit of a finish on it. And we'll talk about that when it comes up. But on a lot of the smaller stuff, I actually use John's acrylic pen blanks. And we'll talk about that in a minute, some of the acrylic pen blanks. So hopefully that answered your question. On the bigger stuff, I shoot it with lacquer. I'll do all the typical things. I'll shoot it with lacquer. I'll let it sit for a good, if I can, I let it sit a week. And then I'll put it up on the, put it out and I'll wipe it out. You know, I'll lightly sand the whole thing in and then I'll put it on my BL buffer system and I get a beautiful finish on these things. And especially on the, like the half wood, half acrylic, I love doing it because the lacquer, typically when I spray the lacquer, I'll try not to get it too much on the acrylic. But the nice thing about it is the acrylic is, like on this thing, the acrylic is, give me a second.
Check out the news.
Yeah. The acrylic on here, there's only small amounts of it. So when I spray, I'll try to spray this all just in this area. But the nice thing about it is when I take it over to my, I put it back up, right? I showed you how to put it back up on the screw, and then I'll put it back in the chuck by just unscrewing it. And then I'll just lightly sand this out. And the sand, same as doing this if I was doing a pen, right? Same technique as doing a pen. So when I sand this, it's going to sand real easy and really, it's going to take it off the lacquer very quickly. And that lacquer will then adhere very well to that. So hopefully that answered your question. If not, please tell Dean to ask me again something more specific.
So I think that answered Bill. Julie asks, why not urethane?
Why not urethane?
Oh, urethane finish.
That's a,
Yeah, it's just a preference.
yeah, it's just, I have being
Yeah.
completely honest, I have tons of lacquer sitting in my house.
He likes the smell of it.
I don't mind it, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
I don't mind lacquer. One,
So,
one
yeah.
nice thing also about them inserts is it sure makes it easier to clean. Like Mark said, you don't want to put something wood through the dishwasher or in the sink. So you would take the handle off, you're able to put the metal stainless steel into the dishwasher and get everything clean and then just put it back together. So,
Right, but now in the smaller stuff that we're gonna do now, we don't have that flexibility.
right. So what's nice about the smaller stuff is if you use the acrylic, you can wipe that down real easily, wash it in some hot water in the sink. I wouldn't put it through a dishwasher, but
Nope.
the way most of these things get used, they're not going to get real dirty anyhow. You know, it's a nutcracker. You're dealing with dry nuts. You're going to get some shell debris in here. So you can probably wipe it out with a paper towel, rinse a little water under it. But if you get the handle wet, it's acrylic. It's not going to hurt it at all.
Let me put
You
that,
want-
let me
sure.
put it under the light. So these are done using John's pen blanks. So these are just two of John's pen blanks. Turn. Now, the only thing that was pointed out to me is if you look at it real close, more fun here too is closed end, right? So this is a closed end turning. So once again, you can use the apparatus that you have to do the closed end turning on here and just, you know, slightly kiss the end maybe with a 60 degree live center, kiss the end on there, and you can do this. But this is literally just two pen blanks. That's why I like showing it.
Sure. And that's the nice thing about it. You don't have to go out and look for larger blanks because most of those blanks that I cut are 7/8 anyhow. So they're
These
gonna
are your
match
blanks
up.
also. You want to talk about it?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You're on.
All right. So this is a measuring set, right? Teaspoon measuring set, all the way down from, is this as you might look when you watch me, you may think, yes, he does look like he eats a lot, but no, he doesn't cook that much. So now you know that. But see, these are the tablespoon sets or the teaspoon sets. And this one's kind of nice too. This one's done with turn between, you turn it with bushings on here. The whole set comes out. Everything is there. And these are all done once again with John's blanks.
Yeah, and again, because they're acrylic, they're easier to wash, wipe down. You don't have to worry about getting the wood wet or the finish, getting water underneath the finish. So
Warning, those are measuring spoons.
What did I say?
You are correct. You
Oh,
said
okay.
measuring spoons. They are not melon ballers. We get people that contact us and it's always the 1 teaspoon and the handle
see why.
mysteriously breaks.
I mean, it's a perfect size.
If you're putting nutmeg in it, it isn't very heavy. If you're using it for a melon baller, that has a completely different impact on it. So, if you sell these things, remind people that they could also buy a melon baller, but this ain't it.
So I shouldn't scoop an
No,
avocado.
don't. If it's real ripe, it's okay.
Okay. All right.
And if there is people out there who cook, the sizes that come in that are 1/4 teaspoon,
Yeah,
half teaspoon, 1 teaspoon, and 1 tablespoon.
right.
One other little thing that we forgot to mention last time, once again, using one of the blanks, coffee scoop. And the nice thing about the coffee scoop, it's the same threaded insert and threaded rod. And it's just a pen blank.
I mean, that's a ton of stuff you can make with the same mandrel.
I love that's
Yeah,
I
it's
love
so
doing it.
versatile.
And so there's other stuff we'll talk about, but
And the mandrel is a big advantage on that type of thing. If you're trying to do closed end, if you haven't done turn between centers on spindles, the end on a closed end, the back side of it will have a dimple in it from your live center that was in your tailstock.
that one wouldn't because it's closed end.
Yeah, this whole thing, once you've gotten to that point on a turn between center, you now have to figure out how to get that off and how to sand the real back end. So what Mark is saying is if you have this in the mandrel, this is floating free, can be floating free. So you can take sandpaper, slow your lathe down a whole lot, and come back here and square that off, or even a parting tool.
Mhm.
And essentially, with the mandrel, you have a lot of assistance in trying to get this thing clean and pretty. Without the mandrel, when you do it completely turn between centers, it is a chore. If you look at one of these, you'll find out I did a lousy job. On the second one, I had a little more time, so I did a better job. But there is something to that. So mandrels do have a place in this world.
One thing I'll also note with that is after I've turned it down and I've removed the dimple or the indent, I've cut it away, parted away. If I need to put it back on the lathe, fine tune something, sand it, I'll take that same live center. I'll put a scrap piece of wood between the finished handle and that point. That way you're just putting enough pressure to support it, but you're not digging into your piece. You're digging into a scrap block that's going to butt up to it.
You know what else I found when I was doing it? And I was going to advocate this here, is that I found a thicker rubber washer.
Yep.
Works great.
Yep.
I'll put the rubber washer on the end, and then I can put the nose of my my tailstock right into that, and then that rubber washer, the thicker ones, I don't know what you use them for, but I know Home Depot carries the thicker ones, and it just sits right in there, and it won't make an indent into it. Yeah, those rubber washers are great for that.
A lot of times I'll use the live center of my turn between center because it's literally just a round flat post. It's a 7mm post that your bushings would slide onto, and I will butt that up between scrap block. That way I know I'm not putting a point into my work. It's just a flat piece to support it. So, well, what's next?
Isn't it amazing how three guys that have been turning for a long time all find different ways, but we all get it solved? That's the important thing. If you look at your problem and figure out how you can solve it, all three ways will work. But I like John's best, to be honest with you. I would do it that way.
When you screw enough of them up, you learn what not to do. That's where I come in handy.
Go ahead.
And and just as the point, it's the reason I like doing these events is the whole point of this is to encourage people to make friends, find other people who are doing it, and talk about it.
Yep.
Right.
When I'll be honest, 25 years ago when I first started this, there was no YouTube.
Exactly.
There was no Zoom calls.
Yep.
How did I get into it? I'm going to take 30 seconds out. These two could take a break. I'll tell you this, how I got into pen making is I went to one of my first craft shows and I saw a gentleman there who made pens. This is in 1995. That's how old I am. I saw a gentleman there and I bought a pen from him. The next year I knew what his booth was, and I went back and he talked to me for a good hour. And I said, "Hey, there are people in your booth." And he went, "They'll be there when I'm done." And he chatted with me for an hour. Then he took my phone calls. This is all in 1995. It was Ed. So I've known Ed from 1995. And I will tell you this, Ed, in all sincerity, the reason I'm a pen maker at all is because you helped me at those two shows.
There were a lot of people that came to the booth, and some of them were a pain in the neck. But as you can see, with Mark and I together in a booth, an hour is not a problem. 2, 3, 4 hours. So we could probably do that too. So, but it was a lot of fun.
I remember calling you. You had just come out with the cat blanks.
Yeah.
And you sent me the brochure. So, all right. So, John, you want to jump on your side?
Yeah. So, what do you do with the scrap stuff, right? Thankfully, you can do ornaments. You can do, you can use them for, just making the utensils like a bottle opener. You can make them smaller. You don't have to go out and buy big blanks for this kind of stuff.
Any guess who were that bottle stopper who made it? Oh, sorry, the can opener. It's a
Dick Sing?
It's a Dick Sing
I thought it was
can
a Dick
opener.
Sing. I have one very
Or bottle
similar.
opener.
Yeah.
He's
So-
on. Hi, Dick.
Well, while we're talking about Dick Sing, let's talk about something else. And before I knew Dick, I had seen his work. I had read several of his books, and I always wanted to be able to do some of the stuff that he did. I still want to be able to do some of the stuff that he does, and someday I hope to do it half as good as what he does it effortlessly. But one of the things that always impressed me was how he could take a jar, and I believe this was a jelly jar, just something that you can put just about anything in and store it, but by itself, it's just a jar, right? Dick had that niche to be able to turn that jar into a gift, into something special. I'm going to let Mark zoom in on that. And we were fortunate enough that he did a demo for us last year on his wood inlays. And this is just phenomenal. I've got one at home that I'll just sit and look at every now and then, just because I'm so impressed with how precise everything is and how clean it looks. But it literally just takes an ordinary glass jar and it turns it into something unique, very special, an eye catcher. And obviously it takes some talent to do what Dick does. And he does it very well. And we're very, very grateful that he's our friend and that he shares a lot of these ideas and his talents with us. But I'm always impressed by the jar lids.
Understand that you don't need to know how to do threading for this. He's taking the jar lid that came with the jar, and then he's creating a top for that lid. So, people used to, when I talk about this, say, well, I don't know anything about threading. You don't need to know anything about threading. You need to know a lot about turning to get that insert in there. But if you do it without the insert, it's easy.
All right,
Thank you for the nice comments.
Thank you, Dick.
Stay on your side.
Stay on my side. All right. So,
So if I can interrupt a second here before I forget to,
yeah.
Mandy passed on a really excellent tip in my opinion. So with your handles, when you're making, you've got that dimple from the live center. One option he says to try and use is he uses decorative upholstery tacks and puts a decorative upholstery tack in the end.
Very good.
Very good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So
Thank you.
So I do a lot of stuff with deer antler. I know a lot of people that hunt. My dad's a taxidermist. I'm around all sorts of that stuff. So I like to go out and shed hunt. Every now and then I might actually get lucky enough to harvest my own deer. Not very often, but as Dick knows, I like to feed the coyotes. So if you've ever turned antler and you've cut them up, you're always going to have those pieces that you can't use. It's either too big for a pen or it's too thin for a pen. So just some ideas, some things that I like to do. The chain pull. Now, what I'll do is I like to take the bottom of the antler where the natural burr is after the deer shed it, and I don't drill all the way through it like we would a pen or an ornament. I'm only going to drill down maybe an inch, and I'm going to just take a 7mm tube, epoxy it in there, and then I'm going to put that on basically just like a closed end. I'll support this end best I can, but it's a small, short piece, so you're not going to do a lot of turning on it. I don't want to cut away everything around the bottom of this burr. I just want to kind of taper the top and smooth it out a little bit. And then when it's all done, press that in. I don't even do a lot of, I might fill the bone. If I start to cut into the marrow, I will use a little bit of CA and kind of seal that. But other than that, these are a big hit for the outdoorsmen to hang on their ceiling fan. And one thing I learned from Dick, when somebody comes in to buy a chain pull, ask them if they've got a light on that fan. And then ask them if they've got a light with a string on it in the closet. All this stuff makes it easier to find the lights to be able to pull on them chains if you've got something hanging on them.
Do you want to put this one directly on the
Sure.
and talk about it?
The other is the tips of the antler. I'll make keychains from them. And basically it's the same concept. I'll drill in maybe 3/4 of an inch at the end because they're pretty small. One thing I'll do is I'll take a scrap piece of wood and drill a small hole in it, put that on my drill press, and I will put the tip of the antler in that hole. And then that way it kind of helps me hold that antler in the position I want. I'll grip the top with a pair of channel locks, and I'll wrap that with either fabric or, wrap it with some tape. That way you're not chewing into the surface of the bone with the pliers. Drill it in, epoxy it, and it's basically the same thing. I don't even turn that one. I roll the edge on the sander just to smooth it out a little bit, and then I'll wipe it down, polish it with a little furniture polish, and press the end in. And, it's just something that we would be throwing away because it's too small to make a pen out of. And what else do you do with all those antler tips? Keychains are a great great little thing. You can make them really quick. I've probably got 5 minutes in that. And if you're selling them at the shows, you don't have a lot of time and money invested in them. And it's just a neat little niche, that makes a nice little gift.
Two comments on the deer stuff.
Yes.
One is a safety reminder, don't breathe the fumes and dust. That's not good.
Absolutely.
The second one is with the tip of the antler. John says you can also make a pipe tamper with it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I've seen
yeah.
that. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about the antlers with the tips like that. You can do just about anything. I've seen guys even make a closed end pen, and they'll just leave, instead of cutting and having a finial on top, they'll drill it down for, say, a cross refill, and then they'll just leave the point at the top. So that way they've got the nib down here that you write with, but then after the center band, it just comes up into that natural tip.
I am not a hunter, but I got a hold of an antler when I was new at this, very new at this. And the antler was normal. It had a curve around and so forth. It was probably a foot long. And I thought it would be really cool to just drill into the bottom part of it and put in a cross mechanism. So I did that and took it to the show.
What?
And in about the first 15 minutes, it sold. And I thought, boy, I have really hit it now. Boy, I'm smart. I got this sucker. I'm going to be fine now. So I went home and made 2 or 3 more and went to the next show. And the shows for the next 4 years. And I still had them. So when you get some nice hot idea, don't make 4. Make 2 and see how it works and then move on.
Yeah, and the problem with antler, you definitely want to wear a respirator, especially when you're sanding it. It's gonna beat the heck out of your tools. You're gonna be sharpening them. Your drill bits are gonna dull real quick. It's gonna stink up the shop. Trust me, if I cut a piece of antler just an inch thick on the bandsaw, one cut, my wife walks in the door upstairs, she knows it. She can smell it. So it's not fun. It's appealing. A lot of guys like it, but it stinks. So, and if you're turning it and you get it too hot, they're prone to crack, and not always right then and there. It might be a couple of days. I know because it's so hard, if people are using them and setting them on a table and they get knocked around a lot, that'll crack them as well. So
one real quick thing too is I found, because I started doing them traditionally, many years ago, I found though that carbide tools make turning deer antler a lot easier.
Much easier.
And what I will wind up doing is I will take a tool that I don't sharpen my carbide bits, but I'll keep them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll keep one that's been worn down a little bit.
Mhm.
And when I'm going to turn some deer antler, I'll do 90% of my cuts using an older cutter head, because I'm just trying to get through it and get it done. So for me, carbide is the answer for turning some of the antlers.
Mm.
I just found it easier than
Oh, yeah.
some of the other stuff.
And when drilling them, you're not going to want to just jump to that one size drill bit like we can with wood and force through it. You're going to want to start with something small and maybe use 3 different steps up. Start, if you're going to put a Sierra in that, you might want to start with an 1/8 or a 1/4 inch, and then jump up another 1/4 and then work your way to that larger hole. So
you want to talk about some of your ornaments?
Sure, we can talk about ornaments. So every year I used to make an ornament for the tree for the family, and this year it just worked out well that we were going to have this meeting, so I got to play around a little bit. What I wanted to do is just basically show you how, obviously they're not big and fancy kits. They're not, some of the large intricate turnings that we know some turn. That takes a lot of time and a lot of talent, but for a quick ornament, something you can play with. This first one I started out with, and I'll pass it over to Mark. It's just a small ornament kit, and it's just basically a top and a bottom. It's a 7mm hole. You epoxy in the tube, and then you turn it basically to the diameter you want. And what I did with this one, I took some pen blanks that I'd cast some resin. I took 3 different colors. It was mica pearl, so it was red, white, and green. And I sliced it, and I epoxied it together with 5-minute 2-part epoxy, and then turned it down to what I wanted. Now I'll pass this to you, Mark, too. You can kind of show them, so that way they can see. if you're going to do something like this, as you notice, one side's pretty sloppy, the other side's pretty clean. I knew the angle that I was going to cut this at, so I staggered them. I didn't just glue them straight. As you can see, I wanted to use less material, so I staggered them when I glued them. But I also mixed some white dye with my epoxy, because every color is glued to white. So this way, if I use transparent and maybe the cut had a little flaw in it from the table saw where you could see the kerf maybe left a little groove, that white epoxy fills the groove on it. So basically it gives you a cleaner cut. It's just kind of a way to cheat that. You can spend all your time sanding them down if you want after you cut them on the table saw, but I found it was easier to just mix a little bit of epoxy or a dye with my epoxy. And that way, as it's set up, it just looked like the white resin. So the other one was just transparent green with a little bit of sparkle to it. And I don't know if you've ever turned any of these little green Christmas trees, but it's 1.5 inch bottle stopper blank, basically. And they're kind of unique.
Good job, Mark. Good
And
job.
I thought what would really be cool, I just didn't have time to do it, was I was going to make a Christmas tree bottle stopper as well. They're transparent. They've got a little bit of green sparkle in them. And when they're held up to the Christmas tree lights, it really jumps out at you, something a little different. But I think it'd be fun to actually turn a green Christmas tree on top of a bottle stopper, the same. I just didn't get to it. So this one was a Sierra pen blank. So I took, this is the Christmas tree or the Christmas star ornament. And it's the same thing. It's a 7mm. I took one of my Sierra opals, and because they come pre-tubed, what I had to do was I turned down a piece of scrap maple that I epoxied inside the Sierra tube. And after that's set up, I went ahead. Well, let me jump back a minute. Before I did that, I turned this blank round. I put it on the lathe. I turned it round between the two centers. That way I knew it was perfectly centered. And that makes a difference, because then what you're going to do is you're going to drill, once you epoxy in that wood post inside of that brass tube, you're going to drill through the wood for the 7mm. And if it weren't turned round first, you'd have no way to drill straight through the center. So I did my drilling on the lathe. I drilled the 7mm hole. I turned it down, added the little beads and coves where I wanted, polished it up, and then went ahead and put the finial and the top on it.
Anybody else notice how diligent I am in trying to get that nice little
You are
flash?
the Vanna
I'm
White.
trying to get that little flash on there as to show you
Yeah.
how that the chatoyancy, if you will.
So this last one was another pen blank, and this was just something Mark and we were talking about in his basement, and I think we both brainstormed in the conversation about the same time about this is something we needed to try. So what I did is I took one of the Kalishan laser pen blank kits, and this was made for a Sierra, and it was the same concept. Instead of the brass tube, and now I had two options, and I learned about the second option after I did this. I was talking to Dick Singh, and he gave me his opinion, and I really liked it. I made a wood plug to put in, a wood dowel to replace the brass, but I think the brass would have added some strength to it. So in the future, I would put the brass tube in, construct the pieces where they go, saturate it with the thin CA, but then I would insert the wood plug inside of the brass tube. Then you have two options. Now, in my option, I cut a couple scrap pieces of diamond wood or Spectraply that I put on it and shaped. But like Dick said, if I would have left the brass tube in it and then just put a plug in the brass tube, I would have a really cool brass ring around the top of it, just something a little decorative, and I wouldn't have had to add that. So you really have all sorts of options when you do this stuff. I chose this orange, yellow, and green Spectraply because it matched the uniform that the little Nutcracker was wearing. Now, I chose the Nutcracker just for the Christmas theme, but this plays into that whole special interest thing, right? If you've got family members and you want to make an ornament for them, Kalishan Woods, they make, several 200 different laser inlay kits of every special interest you can think of, whether it be military or hobby, the woodworker. I mean, everything. You go on there, now they're doing, the dogs are doing football teams, you name it. And you're able to make a Christmas ornament out of a pen blank that's personalized.
Nearly every breed it does it.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. It was a kind of a trial and error thing, and I had a lot of fun making it work. And it just gives you another option when it comes to personalize that Christmas ornament. You don't have to worry about painting if you can just get a laser inlay kit or a favorite color and use a pen blank.
I think half of the fun for me doing this was you coming over to the house last week and just sitting there going,
What can we
what
do
can
with
we
this?
do? What can
Yeah.
we do that's different? Because we didn't want to have a come in here and say, turn an ornament
Right.
and leave it at that. So these are just I think some really cool, fun stuff.
One thing I did learn while making the long finials on the 7mm ornaments, you can't just press them in like you would a pen set. What I would recommend, and I'll give this to Mark, just take a scrap piece of wood, drill a small hole in it, something that, and if you want to insert the finial on that, you want to be able to basically rest the edge of that hole on the shoulder of that tapered piece that you're putting in. You want it to sit to where I have it sitting where I think there's little more than 1/8 of an inch of the finial exposed. And that way I'm pressing on the wood in the shoulder of that metal. I'm not pressing on the little ball at the end. Pull that out for me just a second. No, I mean the wood.
The wood.
Pull it out of the wood.
Yeah.
You see that all the way out. You see that little ball on the end? I know this from experience now. If you try to press that in, you will make a J out of it. You will make a nice little bend in the bottom of it. And when you straighten it out, it'll break off. So take a scrap piece of wood, drill a small hole in it, deep enough that it's deeper than the finial itself, and then use that to press it in.
So that makes up for, that pays for tonight's event.
Exactly.
Just knowing
Yep,
that little
yep,
piece of
yep.
data.
Yeah. And because I mean, those ornament kits, the parts themselves, they're only a couple of bucks, but you don't want to buy 3 sets of them to make one ornament. So, or at least 2 like I did. So, all right, go ahead. What do you think?
Ed, why don't you want to talk about the things in the middle?
Sure, we can start a couple of things. Also, we have rings. Do we
Oh,
want to
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about that first?
Let's
Or we
do
want to
rings.
talk about, okay.
What's your ring?
Here, you can pick the ones that you want to show, and I'll basically talk about them. One of the other things that's somewhat popular, it's interesting being in the position that I'm in. I see what people actually buy. It's always fun to listen to people on the IAP talk about how they're doing this and that and the other thing, and everything they talk about is rhodium and palladium, and there's nobody that turns anything that's on the short end. Everything's top flight. And unfortunately, our sales don't correlate with that. So one of the things that you can do that is inexpensive and fairly easy is finger rings. And I have noted that people who do these will tend to order a bunch of the inserts. So what this is, and Mark could show you, you're looking at a outside piece, which may be plastic or maybe wood, depending on what you choose to do. And then inside you have a stainless steel core, if you want. That core is sized to fit the exact size that you're going to make the ring for. So in other words, those cores, you buy whatever size you want. But they are not, you can't buy one that's a 7 and try to make an 8 out of it. It isn't going to work. So they do buy a lot of those cores, and then what you choose to put on top of it is kind of a matter of whatever you feel in the mood for. They're easy to turn. The hardest part of doing a ring is sizing the hole. You have the ring itself, which is flat, and you need to make it so that it fits inside the piece of wood that you're starting with. And that is somewhat challenging. Typically what I will do, I do it on a scroll chuck, and then I'll take a piece of sandpaper and put it around a dowel. And I make sure that I cut my original hole, which is cut with a Forstner bit. You cut that, it's smaller than the hole you're going to want. And then you sand out the inside of it to make it match your stainless steel fitting. Basically it's trial and error. you're pushing the thing in and out several times until you get it to the size it has to be. But my point is that it's you can do lots and lots and lots of different things. Some of these are acrylics. The one that he had there was one of the cat patterns. For those of you who have known me forever, the cat patterns were things that I had that nobody else had, from leopard and so forth from Italy. And I still have some of it around, so I started playing with that. A lot of different things that are some plastics, some woods. That's most of what I do with rings. First of all, most of what I do with rings is only when I get around to doing it, and it's not for any particular purpose. I'm not selling things anymore. But if I were selling them, this is the kind of thing I would do. The stuff that's with the two channels, and then you fill the two channels. First of all, those cords are more expensive. They make gorgeous pens, but that has a learning curve. If you're trying to do that, you will have a learning there. Mark does it, of course. And I'll let him tell you about how you put that stuff in there, because I get it all over my lathe. I get very little of it in there.
Do you have a video on turning these?
I do have a video on turning the flat ones. I
Yeah.
don't have a video on the 2-track.
I have a video on the 2-track.
Do you?
So if anybody wants to see how these are done on this with the 2-track, and that it's done, I've got a video in 10 minutes to better pen making on it. But yeah, I don't know if it's easier to see. It's probably this one. It's easiest to see here. But it's basically the same kind of concept of how you're doing it. I fill it in. I'm constantly putting glue on it, filling it in. I use Glue Boost on it, and then I
Use the
put
opal stones.
I use the opal
Yep.
stones that I get right here. Dawn
Yep.
got me the opal stones, and I'll constantly drip it in, fill it in, and then turn it off at the top. And then I don't want to steal the thunder on this from anything else. I have a if you go to 10 minutes to better pen making and actually look at there is a video out there, and this is the ring that I make on that video. That one.
You know, and the nice thing about the rings is it doesn't take a lot of material. So if you
Yeah.
mess it up, you're
Yeah.
really not out a lot. You
That's
just
right.
cut it off and start again.
That's right. You can keep the core.
Yeah.
The core doesn't get damaged at all. And the other thing that I worried about when I started this, if you hit it with a tool, even if you mark it, and so far I have not marked any of them while I hit them with the tools. But even if you do, you can sand it out pretty easily. So, you don't have to worry about messing it up and making it look bad. The product comes out pretty well.
Well, and the beauty of it is it fits exactly what we said when we started. These are going to be potentially heirloom Christmas gifts.
Yep.
That the meaning is making the gift, not necessarily how much you spent on the gift.
Yep.
And so these work out great for this. I love these rings.
I posted the video link to Mark's inlay ring video in the chat.
Thank you,
You're
Dean.
fantastic.
Thank you, Dean. I'll throw you your $20 later.
right after the last $20 is from last week.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about? So, are we
Yeah.
good with rings?
We good with rings, Dean?
I think so. Let me look back at the somebody asked about some of the inlays and stuff, so I posted links to where they could find some of that.
Okay.
One other tip somebody posted going back to the antlers is they said another interesting thing you can make with them is take 2 antler tips that are close to the same, and you can use them to make the T-handled corkscrew bottle stoppers.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent.
Very good.
Okay. I think the last thing we're going to talk about, two last things we're going to talk about.
Oh, we got a
Okay.
ton more.
Oh, yeah, we got a
stuff.
few.
Oh, ton more stuff.
You want to talk about your kaleidoscope?
I'll get the kaleidoscopes and we'll get that in. One of the things that we did when we were selling stuff at shows, I did a lot of kaleidoscopes. Now, I'm not going to take a lot of time to talk about this because you may not be the slightest bit interested, but when you're dealing with kaleidoscopes, the kits that are out there, like this one, aha, I found it. That's the spot. The kits that are out there like this with the wand and the whole 9 yards, they're cute little kits, and they're easy to make, easy to put together, and it attracts attention. Don't think that they're very high quality. The mirrors in a kaleidoscope are front surface. And when you're dealing with a front surface mirror, if there's any flaw in it, it's pretty obvious. So when I made these, I made them in 2 different levels. I made the ones like this that essentially kids loved them. You know, the kids would come up. I had a table outside my booth usually that had maybe 20 of these laying on it or standing upright on it, so that people saw, wow, look at all those toys.
Too bad I can't go.
And there would be a
Yeah,
kid
yeah,
who
you
would
can.
come up and
It's working.
you can get to him.
That actually works.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
surprised.
Oh, hang on.
He does good work.
Wait, let's see if I can spin it too.
There you go. Yep.
So see, it does work, and they do have a reasonable look to them. But as I say, if you wanted a higher quality, get front surface mirror, cut it so it fits in there. Then you have something that's really pretty special. The other thing about it is the kaleidoscope instructions tell you how specific you have to get and all the rest of everything that has to be exactly the right length. In the case of this one, you can show this on the back side. On the case of this one, it's supposed to be, according to the instructions, 2 3/16 inch long. I haven't made them for probably 10 years. I made a ton of them. If you can see it, there is an O-ring behind the optics and in front of the wood piece. If you make it the wrong length, you can put an O-ring in there, rubber O-ring, and it looks like it belongs there. So if you find that you run into issues with any of these things, you see what one I'm talking about, Mark?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to it.
Yeah, yeah. I see
Got
what
back out just there.
There you go. There you go. You see that black piece that's just above the gold piece, and that's essentially a spacer, so that everything will stay in place as it should. So, you know, if these things will tell you how specific and how accurate you have to be and so forth. And knowing Dick is watching, I'm sorry, Dick, but some of the time you will do exactly what they told you, and you'll find out that it doesn't work. Dream up an answer. And that's the answer we dreamed up. So, but the kaleidoscopes were very successful for us, and people don't see them anymore. This day and age, kids are fantastic if you ask them to do something with their thumbs. But if you ask them to do anything mechanical, they're a complete loss. The other thing that I always was amused by, kids that were under about 8 years old would figure these things out immediately. The kids that were over that age typically were afraid to touch them. Mom and dad are going to raise Cain if I touch it. So it's a great product, and it's a product you can have a lot of fun with. And if you get into it, making kaleidoscopes can be good for fun and profit too. I sold several that were a couple $100 a piece because you turn the outside tube and so forth. But there's some technique to getting the patterns right and 3 mirrors and how you make everything focus on one spot and so forth. So you can do a lot with it.
So I think we've reached about the halfway point. So let's see how much more fun we got. So if you have a sorry, Dean, any questions?
None in the chat.
All right.
They
So here
ask-
I'm gonna take a minute or two to do some legitimate scrap. So this was basically, it's a candlestick holder. And this is just remnants of a piece that I cast that when I was making my peppermill, I cut this out, left it on the bottom, turned it in between the 2 parts. That's a candle holder. I love this one. This one, little scrap of Spectraply left over, right? Who doesn't want a back scratcher?
Telescoping back.
A telescoping back scratcher. This one, once again, I don't want to, not to scare you. It's one hole that you drill in, turn your piece any way that you want to turn it, and glue it in. And that there, so once again, because I use Spectraply, I put a little bit of a pattern in it. But I love this thing.
Mm-hmm.
John, you got a couple over there that you want to talk about? Your duck call?
So I don't do a lot of duck hunting anymore because I could never hit the birds. But call blanks are a lot of fun. There's several different duck styles. There's a deer grunt call, and there's really not much to these. Depending on the size that you get with the inserts, this is basically what you get in the set. See if I can get a part. There we go. You basically get the reed and then the echo chamber, and all you're going to do is, depending on what you want, this is a 3-inch piece of scrap. It was help me out, piece of ash burl, and I drilled a 5/8 hole through it, and you can buy the mandrels that hold these on there. They run you about $50-something a mandrel, but you've got to buy the 5/8, the 3/4, several, or you can just use the wood bushings, tapered bushings that Ed has, and this is what I did. And it goes on basically the turn between center. It's a 7mm insert hole, and it just holds it between centers, and then you turn it to the shape you want. There's no specific shape that this has to be. I'll let Mark put it under the camera. The nice thing about a call blank, you can make them any shape you want. It has no significance to the sound it makes. The only thing that affects its purpose is the reeds inside. So whether it be a duck call, goose call, grunt call, you can just buy the echo end, and they come in various colors, transparents, oranges, you name it. And then depending on what species, that you're going to have it fit to, but it literally is just turning between center, having fun, cutting some coves, and then putting a lanyard on it.
Want to give him an idea about the soul gift for the golfer we have up there?
Oh yeah. I mean, what do they make that you can make something like golfs? Not much. Probably have to back it up a hair. There we go. It's just the light. Yeah.
White and light don't get along that well.
Absolutely not. I could never find my golf balls either. So
Well,
Basically, yeah,
mine were underwater. I knew where to look. It just
it's a
didn't
golf
help.
ball. It's a golf ball that was drilled, and then using the keychain kit that you can get, put it on the keychain. Can I have the other two things?
yes, you can.
Oh, forgot about that. Oh, cool.
So another thing that's really, really popular, seam rippers. This is done with a standard pen blank. And all you do is you pop it. Now, when I sell these at a show, I always say that I've never needed them because I'm more of a natural seam ripper, if you know what I mean. But it's a seam ripper. Has a pair of bushings. You do it the exact same way that you do a pen. And you have a seam ripper. But say that you have a friend or someone who does a lot more sewing or crocheting on there. I love this kit. And it's so simple to make. And all it is one pen blank. You drill it and you put your insert into it.
Is that a closed end?
No. No.
Oh, okay. It's got an end. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
That's
Oh, it's got a clip on it.
bushings. Bushings, you just turn it down
Sure.
to the bushings. And then all you're gonna do is put any one of your crochet hooks into it and use it as a crochet hook.
Nice.
I will tell you that the people who buy these buy them by large numbers. If you've never made one and you don't know where to sell it, if you're selling your stuff, you probably don't need to make them. But if you make some of them, particularly I'm told at quilting shows, they sell like crazy. And there's 9 holes in there.
Yep.
It comes with 6 heads. And then there are 3 additional heads that you can purchase to make it a complete set. Most of the guys that sell them do tend to purchase the additional stuff and get the complete set. But it is something that I knew nothing about, and we sell a ton of them.
Couple other things can we talk about?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do
Razors?
this one. Yeah.
You got it? You
Yep.
got it.
Yep.
You got it.
So for the razor, it's a little hard to see. So once again, though, this one gonna be near a lot of water,
Yep.
right? So this one's using one of John's acrylic blanks,
Pen blanks.
pen blanks.
Again,
These
yeah.
are just standard pen blanks. And it's, all you do is you turn the space, the stem, and then the handle itself. And then these take, what's the razor on these, Ed?
Fusion or Mach 3.
Yep.
This one is a Fusion, and then it's also available in Mach 3. And it's available as a safety razor as well if you like the old safety razor, double-edged razors.
So Dean, a couple things popped up. Any questions?
No questions, couple of comments. Terry says they like making glass turkey calls.
Yep.
And Greg, even before somebody said on there, the quilters love the crochet hooks.
So, well, that's why we're trying to do it. I mean, showing you some of the stuff. I got two more small things, if it's okay.
Sure,
Yeah.
of course it's okay.
So when I was here, I was fascinated. Let's talk a little bit about peppermills. I love turning peppermills. So this is the traditional. And Ed, you want to give a idea? You want to give them an idea of
The
the
mechanism.
mechanisms
that we use, there are several of them. First of all, Penn State has a number of different mechanisms that we do sell. So if you're married to that idea, more power to you. I sold this mechanism in the year 2000. There was a competition for restaurant peppermills. The competition was held in Paris, France. And all the major manufacturers of peppermills went to this competition. The winner was from the United States, much to my shock. And it was Chef Specialties in Pittsburgh area, Pennsylvania. So I contacted them and asked them if I could sell their mechanisms. And it was the first time that anybody had ever asked that question. So they said, yes, they would let me buy them. Well, long story short, we're still buying from them, only in a lot bigger quantity than we used to. Chef Specialties, as I say, it was picked as the best mechanism in the world among restaurants. They have all stainless steel parts. The bottom section, when they do it, when you buy one of their peppermills made by them, that is guaranteed for life. Now, why isn't it guaranteed for life when we do it? Because if you put it in crooked, it will wear. And obviously they know that they're going to put theirs in straight, but they don't know what you're going to do when you buy a mechanism. So the mechanism itself is unsurpassed. And if you are careful and put it together properly, I have one at home that I've used for over 20 years, and it still does exactly what it did the first day. They are adjustable by that knob on top. You can open it up and it gives you a coarse grind. You can tighten it down and it gives you a fine grind. When you look at those two pieces, you're looking at the male section of it that's going up and down perceptibly, one from me, but you may not even know it. That piece goes up and down and creates a larger gap with another piece that is also a cutting piece. So the two of them turn together, and that's how it does what it does. But it's a really good mechanism. And I used to, and still do it, you may too, Mark. I bought the thing in 14-inch length.
Yep.
And then I made my peppermill, and then I cut the piece so that it would match it. Because I tried to make my peppermills match the length of the rod, and they never worked out. So I'll let Mark go from there. I've given you the
what I wind up doing, Ed, that's a perfect point. What I wind up doing is I'll put the bottom in.
Yep.
And then I'll pull it out on top.
Yep.
I'll take a little, sorry, my hand's in the way. I'll take up a ballpoint pen, preferably one that I hand turned myself. And I'll mark where on the stem I am, and then measure that off. Go to the bottom, cut that off on the bottom, right? So if I'm off an 1/8 of an inch, or maybe, I'm making a shorter mill and I'm off an inch and a half, I'll go to the bottom, I'll cut that off the bottom, and then I use a ball peen hammer and I'll peen the end of it again so that it fits right back into it.
Right.
And I get a perfect fit every time. I normally, just as a tip or a trick, when I'm going to measure it on top, and as I said, it's hard to show on here, but I'll press the bottom in to show you it. I'll normally put it so I get about one full thread
Yeah.
that I'm gonna cut off. So I have a little bit of room in case I have a little bit of slack on the end. But for the most part, that's what I'll do. You can see when I'm doing it. Push it up, mark it on here, then take that from the first thread, go to the bottom and take it off. Now, I need to ask you guys one favor. Is this one is in yellow and black Spectraply, which is the Iowa colors. So if any of you guys run into my daughter before now and before the start of Christmas, don't tell my daughter that she's getting an Iowa colored peppermill because she was a teacher at Iowa. Or sorry, she went to Iowa. So I got two more that I want to talk about.
Go ahead.
If you just want to do normal salt and pepper, I love doing these. These are very simple to make. It's just a hole that gets drilled in, a hole that you get to put on top, and it's just a salt and pepper shaker. And then finally, and then Ed, you're going to talk about these more.
Okay.
All right. Finally, one more gift that I like to make, or that I made a couple years ago. This one's just kind of a funny little thing. So if you know me, you know that I use Easy wood turning tools. And we had Chris and Christy on here a couple months ago,
Mhm.
did the demo for us. So if I open this up and I pull this one out, it looks like, let's do it that way. It looks like the Easy wood turning. And it's a nice closed end pen. So it's just another way of taking something and rethinking it. And so I did, their standard colors for the round, the square and the diamond point. And I used a whole bunch of different techniques, right? This has got a closed end look to it. So it's got a closed end technique. It's got a decal on here. So I used the decal. It's also got the, I know I'm talking a lot about product here, but it's also got the glue boost color schemes on here. And all I did was I made a pen set for Chris and Christy that looked just like Easy wood turning tools.
And your decals are water slide, right?
Water slide decals,
And then will you lacquer over them?
which is a technique you taught me. Yes, John. So yeah, I'll put them on, and then I'll put enough coats of lacquer on it so when you're looking at them, you don't see the label on here anymore. You don't see the decal on there. And if you come up here and look at it, you might see it only if you're doing it at an angle, but for the most part, you don't. And then I actually use the Easy wood turning tool to burn some in there. And then I use the Easy wood wire to cut me some lines into it. So this one looks like an Easy wood turning tool. And I didn't need the case anymore. So if you see Chris and Christy, don't tell them what they're getting for Christmas from me. And then finally, Ed, you want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, briefly.
Let me go back to the.
When we started looking at this stuff, we looked to see all the things that we had, and one of the things that we had appeals to me because my son has gotten very interested in smoking meat, and every weekend he's smoking something. My son is 40 years old and very well successful. So, at any rate, he takes his time off and smokes meat. Well, after he smokes it, apparently he turns it into meat that you can tear apart and turn into shredded pork or shredded beef or whatever. We used to call it barbecue. You don't call it that anymore, apparently. But the reason that I wanted to show this is not so much stories about my family. More importantly, this thing was a real challenge because nothing is standard on it. And so I'd want to go through just a couple of ideas that I had to develop to be able to make this. And that was what, to me, is more interesting than the tool itself. Yeah, we have one that they come as a pair, two of them, they match each other kind of, and you pull apart and you pull apart your pork. Okay, that's all well and good. Now, how'd you get there from here? When you start out with your piece of material, this is polyester, commercially produced. It's the Ranger series that we get from Italy. I knew it had come. the thing about it is, it's wonderful material. It makes a really pretty, you can show the color of that if you want to. It makes a really pretty blank, but it also is very shatter. It will shatter easily. And trying to turn it so that you don't have chuck marks in it and shatter marks in it and so forth is a challenge. So I warn you before you start, if you decide to make this product, if you decide to choose the polyester, congratulations, good luck. I hope it works out for you, but it will not be easy.
It's beautiful though.
Well, when they come out, they are pretty.
That
And,
is
and
beautiful.
the original idea was that these were going to be for my son, and I realized he doesn't like purple all that much.
Well, it's the nice part of it. It has some nice heft.
Yes, it is a very heavy piece. But as I say, nothing was standard. So the reason I bring it to your attention, how do you get around a problem? You solve the problem. This I turned between centers, but we had no inserts for it. That is the 12 millimeter hole. It has to be long enough to take that bolt, which is on here. So you have to design something that's going to be an inch deep and be able to take a 12 millimeter thread. So basically what I did was drill the hole first before I turned anything. This was a block when I drilled the hole. Drill the hole and then countersink another hole so that when you put that nut in there, it would not fall down to the bottom. You want that nut, it's not going to come out. It's there.
No, I'm saying it's
Okay.
flush too.
So basically you're setting that in there instead of an insert. But because we're dealing with all these handles that do have a large top, you aren't restricted. My first concern with this was, will you be able to see it when I'm done? But because I can turn a knuckle on the top, I have enough material there that no, you won't see it. So as you design these things, guys, recognize that it's, you know, there are a lot of things that you can bring to the table other than kit parts. If you've got a problem, figure out how to solve it. It isn't that difficult. It is rewarding as heck. When I got finished with it and looked at it, I thought, well, you know, that was a lot of work, but it turned out to be a pretty nice gizmo. So that's the long and the short of adapting it. Again, the problem with the back end, you do have a nipple on the back end, and getting that off ended up being something I did with a Dremel tool. Now, if you're interested in that product, and if you read the instructions before you do the which of course I didn't, you will find out that there's a piece in there that fits in the bottom, so you can drill the bottom out and put this in, and you don't have to worry about the dimple at all. It takes care of the problem.
Yeah, then you've got a
But
way to
I was way too smart to do that. If I had been, you know, a dumb person, I would have looked at the instructions and I would have known about this, but no, I'm way too smart for that. So that's the long and short of this stuff. Is there anything else?
Yeah, there's one that we forgot that I
Okay.
like doing.
Sure.
I don't think we talked about this one, did we?
Mm-mm.
So, I was in the pepper grinder kick, and then this one's kind of like a little mini pepper grinder. And I love this because look at the amount of wood I'm using. It's literally a scrap piece of wood that I got. Same place that John got his burl for his. I got the burl for mine. And it's a simple, small little pepper grinder. Pepper comes out here. This is the nice thing about it is if you have like real special pepper that you like to use, you could sneak your own pepper grinder right into the restaurant, and there you go. So with that, I mean, I think we covered, I don't know how we're doing on time. How are we doing on time?
7:48.
7:48.
So I mean,
Hour and
right
45
about,
minutes.
yeah. So with that, I think I covered everything that I was going to cover.
Okay.
You guys
Yeah.
cover it. So
We
any
do have a
questions?
couple. There is a couple out in the chat. This one's for John. The question was about your Marine Corps pen blanks from the beginning. They asked where you find your pieces for it. I think you had said you do a lot of hunting on eBay,
I
but
did
they
s-
asked,
So
what-
for the walking medallions, if you Google walking medallion US Marines, I think it's Treeline USA. and they carry several different, because it's a website that sells carving heads and things like that for making walking sticks. They have a plethora of different medallions.
There was a follow-up question of what they were called. You just answered that one right to the nail.
Yep.
Keith Knowles says that an aviation riv nut would have made a good insert for your handle. So somebody's looking for something for a different insert, just an idea. Myra asks, is there a video about adding labels? Your water slide labels site you
So
did.
that's something that we've talked about. It'll probably be a future Thursday night special. Maybe we'll do something as far as different labels and personalizing.
I will also make an offer, John, that at any point that you want to make a label video, it could go out in 10 minutes to Better Pen Making
Well,
with no problem at all.
you know, after Christmas, maybe I'll take you up on that. Water slide decals are fun and they're really easy. The biggest chore is getting durable paper that's going to hold up. It's not all made the same. There's companies that have it out there, but with the way that we use it, obviously it has to hold up through the process, and putting a finish over it can be challenging. So yeah, I think after Christmas, maybe we'll look at a January. I'll do a demo, and Mark can put it on his channel. But I would like to do something like that in one of these meetings as well.
Kill two birds with one stone. We can put
Absolutely.
it on here, and then we can move it up onto your channel
I'm fine
too.
with that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
There was one that I saw that disappeared. I don't know why it disappeared, but for Mark, there was a question about when you're spraying your lacquer, how do you deal with drips, and how do you not get drips on your parts?
When I'm spraying my
Spraying lacquer.
so when I'm spraying the lacquer, I'll just go over it. Let me make sure that I get if I answer what I am using that O-ring. Sorry, I put it away already.
Okay.
I am using the O-ring. I'll spray it and I'll hang it. But lacquer, just one thing that I want to let you know is my lacquer finish is like a 2 or 3 step process. What I'll wind up doing is I'll lacquer it. Then I will go put it back on the lathe, and I will take 4/0 steel wool, and I'll steel wool it, and then I'll knock it down. I will sometimes, here's the, I didn't mention this. A lot of times I'll put my first couple coats on is not lacquer. I'll put it on a shellac. I like to use the yellow can of shellac, and I'll put shellac on there. Then I'll put it on, and I'll 4/0 steel wool it down, and then take some of my micro mesh down. Then I'll put my lacquer finish on it. And I think, well, this thing is lacquered also. One of the things that I think people are nervous about is once the lacquer is on there, it doesn't mean you can't sand over it. So I'll take micro mesh, I'll wet sand over my piece, and I'll get any kind of drips. Or, most of the time when I'm spraying it, I'm very cautious not to get the drips on it, because that's why I'm using the hooks to use gravity to let the spray go on it. And so I'm not going to get a lot of areas of mistake on there. But if I do, I'll just simply sand it off, and I'll refinish that if there is a big piece on there. But for the most part, my finish, put on shellac at first, take it back to my lathe, knock it off with 4/0 steel wool, put it back on using my micro mesh, then spray it with 6 to 8 coats of lacquer, a little bit of 4/0 steel wool on it, and then give it 1 or 2 last finishes on it, and then it goes right on my Beal buffing system, and I buff it. So I don't know if I answered that whole question, but that's the way I put lacquer on any of my finishes on here.
One thing you have to know, if you haven't used lacquer, you definitely want to wear a respirator.
Yep.
You want to use it in a well-ventilated area. It's not something that you want to breathe in, and it can be very overwhelming quick.
But but on the flip side, once you pass 6 feet, it's completely safe.
Yeah.
Once
you're 6 feet under, it's completely.
I
Yeah.
did some research on it.
Yeah.
Because I've watched
Oh, right. So yeah, but I'm saying you as a person
Yes.
spraying the lacquer, you don't want to inhale a lot of that. It can go to your head real quick. So be safe with it. Lacquer also has a very lengthy drying and curing period.
Exactly.
It may be dry to the touch, but it still has to cure, and usually that's several days.
for me, it's
So,
usually a week.
yeah.
I put on, as I said, I'll put on 4 or 5 coats, and then I'll let it sit a week,
Yeah,
and then I will go do it. And then if I put on a couple more coats, I let it sit another week.
and obviously there's several types out there. If you're into building furniture, or you've got high volume, low density sprayer. You can get the pre-catalyzed lacquer, catalyze it up as you need it, put it on there. It goes on really quick, dries super fast. Most of us just buy a rattle can. I like Deft. That seems to work really well, but whatever you can find in your area, read the label real well. You also want to pay attention to your air temperature. If it's too cold, you don't want to be using it. It'll kind of blotch up on you.
And humidity.
And humidity is another thing.
another
And
one.
you may want to wipe that piece off real well with some denatured alcohol or some acetone and let it fully dry before you put your lacquer on. Make sure it's good and clean.
I spent years trying to get a lacquer finish in my basement and then realized that first I was putting on too much. And second, the humidity down there was so high, I was never going to get it to dry. So, be aware that a lot of thin coats are a whole lot better than 1 or 2 thick coats that never dry.
Yep. Yeah, it's something you really have to exercise patience with.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
If I use it, I'll spray it and then I'll, like Mark, set it aside, walk away and do something else.
Yeah.
And then wait. In other words, literally, it's like watching paint dry. So.
And afterwards, if anybody wants to stay on, I have a great lacquer joke that you could tell.
Anything else, Dean?
That's all I see.
With that, we will thank all of you for attending, and hopefully you feel like you got something out of it. One further thing that Mark is going to want to talk about is the MPG. He forgot.
Yeah.
No,
Can you
I didn't.
imagine?
No,
Mark?
he didn't
forget. I was
forget.
right.
Go for it.
If
So
if I could make a quick comment before you do that, Mark.
Sure.
Just with the ornament components, the little 3-inch ones that John was showing and everything. At one point, I got to spend pretty much an hour uninterrupted with Cindy Drozda.
Mhm.
Yeah. And showing me finials and whatever. And I decided I just wanted to do the middle part at first, just to get used to that. So I took a pen blank, or whatever size you want, drilled about 3/4 of an inch in each side, glued in a tube, and then turned it between centers and got to do all the middle finial parts, and then pressed in the ornament parts.
Mhm.
And it's a great skill builder. And even if you screw it up, you get something good at the end, or you throw out the blank and start over, and you're out 1.5 inches of brass tube. If anybody wants to try that, I suggest you do it, because again, you don't have to worry about the little flimsy parts at the end like Cindy does, and it was fun. And I've made a bunch of those.
Well, thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm signing up for the MPG tomorrow, Mark.
Well, there's two things. There's 2 things I want to. So that was a great prelude to something else I want to bring up. John, Ed, and I spend a fair amount of time trying to think of what else can we talk about, and we've got a million things. But you know what? If you wouldn't mind, if you have ideas of things that you want to see, topics that you want to see us explore, and we may not be, right? We've been able to bring in some of the best around, right? When we were talking about carbide tools, we didn't take it on ourselves. We brought in
Easy with.
Chris and Christy from Easy Wood Turning Tools. When we wanted to talk about casting, I think John's the best around, and we were able to bring in John. When we were able to, last month, if you were able to attend, you got to talk to Dick Singh and have that. So please spend a minute. All that I ask from this stuff is spend a minute and send an email to sales@Exotic Blanks with ideas for other topics. And if we can find people who will cover it, we'll definitely do that. Now, this part is going to be a little bit of a commercial. The website MidwestPenturnersGathering.com went live in November. And there's a little secret. We give away, I think over the last couple of years, probably on average between $8,000 and $10,000 worth of prizes at the show.
Per
year. Last year, I think we hit our high. We had $10,000 worth of prizes we gave away at the show. It's $49 to get in. It's April. It's in April this year.
19th.
I think it's the 19th and 20th.
Yeah.
Friday and Saturday in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. The website is Midwest Pen Turners Gathering, underhill.com. And the reason that I'm telling you this is the sooner you sign up, the better your chances you are for winning some of the prizes. And what do I mean? Is if you sign up in November, you get 6 tickets for the prizes. If you wait to December, you get 5 tickets, 4 tickets, 3 tickets, 2 tickets. To the last month where you sign up, you get 1 ticket. Here's the secret. Pretty much everybody leaves with something, right? So I wouldn't worry about it if you sign up later. You're still going to get, and the door prizes are typically more than you paid to get in. It's $49 to get in, and I don't think anybody leaves with less than $49 in door prizes. But if you're interested in, last year we had we have the special raffle for for the people who sign up. We gave away a Jet 1024.
1221.
1221, yeah, even better.
Yeah.
A Jet 1221 lathe. The website's up there. We've got some of the demonstrators now up there. I know Ed does demonstrations, John's done demonstrations. I will tell you this, they're not up there yet, but a gentleman that I know really well in Iowa is going to do one on how to make the pen blanks out of fishing line and things like that. I'm working with a couple guys who will do some small turnings. So it won't be just pens. There will be 3 classes in small turning. Christy Caliendo is going to do a demo on how to use carbide tools. We get the top of the line. And more importantly, John works really hard at this, is we get the top of the line vendors out there. It's not just 20 guys who are selling pen blanks. You're going to get vacuum systems. You're going to get lathes. You're going to get Easywood wood turning tools. You're going to get Ed Brown. You're going to get pen blanks. You're going to get everything that's out there. You're going to get a ton of it. So if you have any questions, go to MidwestPenTurnersGathering.com. There is an Ask Us section. But I would advise you, if you're thinking about going, sign up early because you're just going to get more tickets. And if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email. You can shoot me an email either at Mark Dreyer at Yahoo. Send it to, is it okay to send it through sales here?
Sure.
Send it to sales@exoticblanks.com and Ed will route them to me and I'll get all your questions answered. But it's also on the website and all the questions are out there. You can send it to mpginfo@yahoo.com. And I look forward to seeing everybody there. Sorry for the commercial, but it's a big event for us.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a big event for us. And we get about 350 pen makers out there. It's a blast.
Yeah, it's growing every year.
And the last thing I'd say is thanks to Ed, because believe it or not, everything that you see here, we basically turned in the last 2 weeks. We came out here, we talked to Ed about what did we want to do for this one. I'll be honest, Ed, I walked through some of the areas here that I didn't know that you guys had. And we picked some of this stuff out. Dawn was a big help. Like, this stuff. I didn't know that we had the kaleidoscope stuff, and it was a blast. So everything you see on this table, we literally turned in the last 2 weeks. And so if you're looking for stuff to do between now and Christmas, I would just tell you now's the time to start on it and you'd have a blast.
And it's now 8:01, and I feel like everybody has had enough of listening to me. Of course, you enjoyed Mark and John, but they've had enough of listening to me. So we'll say goodnight to you all, and thank you once again for coming. If you have any comments that you'd like to make to Sales at Exotics, we do read everything. And you will you will get a survey about this particular presentation because I'm interested as how you thought about this format. So thanks a lot for coming. And we'll look forward to seeing you next month.